Recently, there has been a renewed interest in mysterious phenomena regarding the environs of the moon and strange phenomena regarding it. Currently, there is a claim making the rounds of a Ukrainian team of scientists photographing UAP near the moon, leading to much sensationalization on the internet regarding alien lunar bases. This is jumping the gun regarding that particular paper because it is only in preprint and has not yet either been peer-reviewed or corroborated with further observations. Corroborated being key because the methods used to pick up those objects are one of the most easily repeatable experiments possible in astronomy. The telescope and camera used were essentially a small 6-inch telescope with a commercial-grade but good camera. There are thousands of amateur astronomers across the globe that have equipment far exceeding this in private hands that can at any time the moon is visible take new observations and report back. And that no doubt will be done in this regard. If they pick something up, we'll all know it. If they don't, then we'll all know it. But I would not bet the farm on this one, as the moon is probably the most photographed astronomical object, and has been since photography began. And it is looked at photographically and visually by thousands of people every night, because everyone can see it. It's right there to look at, and this phenomenon, if there was something to it, would have been reported decades ago, and would be repeatedly reported every night the moon is visible globally. Another recent event making the rounds was, of course, the photograph of blue lights in the lunar sky taken by the Apollo astronauts, and released as part of the US government's recent tranches of UFO documents. This was a weird one, since that image was never classified and has been known about for decades, and well known to UFO researchers. But there's a problem with this photograph, despite all the sensationalization going on around it these days. So the characteristically blue lights seem to appear in the lunar sky at first glance, but the problem is they also appear in areas of the film that were not exposed. You can see two here that never saw any light at all. This means that the blue lights are simply the expected action of cosmic rays. Cosmic rays were also doing this famously in the retinas of the astronauts, who would see flashes even when their eyes were closed. But there are other outstanding mysteries regarding the moon, and one of them arose recently during the Artemis II mission. The Apollo moon mission spotted flashes of light, distinct from optical flashes they were experiencing due to cosmic rays hitting their eyes, that appeared to be occurring on the surface of the moon when no sunlight was present. That mystery sat dormant for decades until the Artemis crew reported them once again, 6 of them in a very short time. This has traditionally been explained by meteorite impact flashes on the surface, but there's an apparent discrepancy in that seeing 6 within about an hour seems rather high, but actually still is within the estimates for impacts on the moon. To create a visible flash on the surface of the moon, these are not micrometeoroids. These rocks would have some heft, and that seems an awfully huge rate for a solar system of today. Earth is much bigger and would have trouble collecting that much across a single hemisphere in that short of a time. In fact, Earth's rate on a really active day is still just over 2 meteorites per hour. So that mystery remains open because the explanation seems not impossible, but perhaps bordering on implausible given how small the moon's footprint is compared to Earth. Another phenomenon noted by the Apollo astronauts has a plausible explanation, but a rather ominous one. It's called the Lunar Horizon Glow and actually was first observed robotically by the Surveyor program, and later the Apollo 15 and 17 missions. Basically, it's a glow seen on the horizon of the moon, sometimes, but not always, and represents a glow, sometimes rather bright, within the unbelievably thin, almost non-existent atmosphere of the moon. Very likely caused by dust. But how did that dust get there? Well, ostensibly, dust that is kicked up off the surface of the moon by whatever process can remain aloft for about 3 hours. Electrostatically charged particles can levitate in electrostatic fields and go longer, and this seems to happen on the moon. More on that in a bit. In short, this is electrostatically levitating dust. Clouds of dust near the terminator line on the moon, the separation from light and dark, forward scatter light, probably causing this glow. Incidentally, dust on the moon can go quite high, and since lunar dust is ground so fine by the micrometeoroid lunar gardening process, these particles are abrasive and dangerous in their own right. They can rise up to 10 kilometers from the lunar surface if small enough, say 10 micrometers. Whatever the levitation process is, it's believed to eject as much as 10 million or more particles into a cloud, which is significantly more than micrometeorite strikes can kick up. The idea is this. During the lunar day, which lasts roughly 2 weeks, the surface is rawly bombarded by the sun's infrared and ultraviolet, with no atmosphere to speak of to stop it. This causes electrons to get knocked off the dust on the surface, and in a nutshell, differences in charge on both the lighted and dark side, and dust levitates. When it changes, the dust falls back out, and the whole cycle repeats. This actually goes for any celestial body with a terrestrial surface that does not have a significant atmosphere. It may indeed be occurring on Mercury as well, and represents the leading mechanism for redistributing dust on an airless body like that. It would also work for moons without atmospheres, though that effect would be contingent on how far out the moon is from the sun, and whether it's an ice surface or a rock surface. This also works for asteroids, and indeed there is a phenomenon noted with the asteroid 433 Eros, and even a comet, that are called dust ponds that seem to have formed as an effect of this process. Basically, it smoothed dusty areas of those bodies. This all plays into a historical version of this phenomenon, which used to be known as lunar transient phenomena spotted from Earth, and they go back centuries. People would see flashes on the surface of the moon, and even brownish cloud-like discolorations, or even white or reddish glows, and hazy regions that would change shape. There was even expressed skepticism from some in the scientific community as to whether these brief transients were actually real, and it's turning out they are real, and there's a perfectly reasonable mechanism for them. One confounding thing here is something we know exists and I have personally seen. This is a phenomenon of glowing dust in the solar system itself. It is called the zodiacal light. We know exactly what this is. It's light scattered by the dust of the plane of the solar system, which incidentally is what Queen guitarist and also professional astrophysicist Brian May specializes in. I first saw it as an amateur astronomer, probably 15 years old at the time, in a dark sky location about 5 a.m. while observing a comet with my physicist cousin, and have seen it a number of times since, typically just before dawn. It's regularly seen by people who live in dark sky locations, when the angles get just right for it. The problem is, it's hard to tell the lunar glows from the zodiacal light, especially since they are both phenomena of dust, so picking out lunar glows can be tricky as far as taking instrument measurements of it. An example here are photographs designed to take light data taken by Apollo 15 and 17 that show excess light. There was a measurable glow, but the question is where that glow was originating from. There were also short-term bursts for about 10 seconds that were also reported by Apollo 8 and 10 that are still unidentified. The Clementine moon mission years ago also should have detected the lunar transient glow, but there wasn't really a way to separate it out from the zodiacal light. There was, however, the question of the laser reflectors Apollo astronauts placed on the lunar surface. The idea being you could sound the distance to the moon by hitting a calibrated laser on them and get the bounced reflection back. This worked. Lots of people have done that. And the moon landing never happened. People have no idea those reflectors exist, but there was a notable degradation over the years of those mirrors. And a fine way to account for that is the levitating dust accumulating on them when it falls back out. Apollo 17 actually did an experiment along these lines called LEAM, standing for Lunar Ejecta and Meteorites. It was literally looking for dust kicked up by the tiny meteoroids, which would not have produced visible light, incidentally, to someone orbiting the moon, far too small. Those flashes were something else, something bigger. And this led to a mystery. So the experiment recorded the number, direction, energy, and speed of the particles impacting the moon, and for some reason LEAM saw a sizable increase in the morning, at much slower speeds than the meteoroids coming in. And it was doing it from preferential directions. In addition to this, the temperature of the LEAM experiment rose dramatically during this period, just after the lunar sunrise, to the point that it had to be turned off to prevent it from overheating and incurring damage. The best anyone has come up with for this is that it was electrostatically charged moon dust clinging to the instrument. Unfortunately, LEAM was only intended to operate briefly, so this experiment has not been followed up on. In a nutshell, there's a front of levitating dust that follows the terminator between light and day on the moon like a wave. This is important to learn more about, however, because if we're going to send people back to the moon and start thinking about a permanent base on the moon, The levitating charged dust wave problem could very easily represent a hazard if the equipment isn't designed beforehand to handle it, especially since lunar dust itself is incredibly abrasive and harmful on its own. A more modern experiment regarding the lunar horizon glow happened in 2011. The new experiment was a joint operation done by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in conjunction with the Lyman Alpha Mapping Project, and involved looking at the moon from a certain juxtaposition using long exposure photography in both experiments to try to catch the lunar horizon glow. It turns out, under the conditions of those observations, the glow was extremely weak, setting limits on how bright it could get, but only under the observing circumstances, because the phenomenon was spotted visually by the Apollo astronauts, which means it needs to be bright, at least sometimes. The moon holds many mysteries, indeed. Thanks for listening. I'm futurist and science fiction author John Michael Godier, currently eyeing the moon suspiciously, an activity I've done my entire life since I first noticed it was there. And while that would have been sometime in the 1970s, I remember nothing about it, as I was a toddler or before, but I know I eyed it suspiciously. And be sure to check out my books at your favorite online book retailer and subscribe to my channels for regular in-depth explorations into the interesting, weird, and unknown aspects of this amazing universe in which we live.